Hello my friends, this is part 2 in a series of videos where we are discovering the importance of the composite chart. We've seen in the database research the composite chart was the most dominantly important thing, related to married couples. Now we're applying that finding to our work with clients. We have a romantic couple as an example, and two people that are, romantically attracted to each other, and what is going on to make that attraction. We already noticed, as I explained at the end of the first part of this video, that one of the people has a 35 vibe, is a Venus vibe. If you don't know what I mean by Venus vibe, you can go back and watch the first video in the series. Venus vibe just means a vibration where Venus is very strong. And it's strong by having aspects to a lot of planets with small orbs. 35 vibe is very strong. There's very little is showing up in the synastry, meaning the biwheel, and you look at the aspects between them. Now here is the 35 vibe of the composite chart. And it's not tremendously powerful. We're seeing Venus trine Mars, Venus at 2 Scorpio, almost closer to 3 Scorpio, Mars at 5 Pisces. So Venus is trine Mars with a 2.5 degrees orb, excuse me, and Mars is sextile Saturn, and Saturn is opposition Venus. It's a Venus-Mars-Saturn. It's not hugely powerful. So actually we're not seeing anything enormously strong. But what I decided to do is, when you see a trine, what is the rule when you see a trine? To see more details, you can triple the vibe. So 35 times 3 is 105. So let's look at the 105 vibration to see if Venus and Mars pick something else up. So in the next slide, we're going to look at the 105 vibe. Okay, here we go. The 35 times 3 is huge. It's, bam, enormous. So we don't see much in the synastry on 35 vibe. We don't see much in the 35 vibe of the composite. But in overtone of the 35 vibe is through the roof powerful. Now, if you're new to vibrational astrology, this may sound like crazy, like a fishing expedition, like, oh my God, you're just searching around all over the place, whoa, until you find something. Whoa, bro, chill, man, you're just going all over the place. Actually, we're not. We're not going all over the place. These are the rules of vibrational astrology, is that the overtones, those higher vibrations, are actually more powerful than the lower vibrations. They get to like a more cellular, fundamental level. The low vibrations are very powerful when the orbs are so small. When the orbs are tiny, they're still within orb in the higher vibes, in the overtones. So the way astrology works is very different from what we assumed. I never would have guessed that astrology works this way, but every year as we do more research, we figure out how astrology works, it's different from what we assumed. So going to an overtone of the 35 vibe really makes sense. I mean, totally makes sense that it could be in an overtone of 35. And what do we see in the overtone? We're seeing a Venus, Jupiter, Neptune, a grand trine spreading from 8 degrees to 10 degrees, 2 degrees. And Uranus is also at 8 degrees here, so it's a kite. You see in light green, I put a light green shadow, I guess you could call it, a light green tone here to show this extremely strong kite. And what are the planets? Venus, Uranus, Neptune, and Jupiter. Venus, Uranus is the strongest pair you can have for romantic compatibility. Neptune is among one of the strongest. It's a Venus, Uranus, Neptune, and for good measure, let's throw Jupiter in. This is huge. These are the planets that create romantic compatibility. And then on top of that, the Sun is also at 7 degrees of a zodiac sign, and it's making a yod, the two quincunxes, to the Venus-Uranus sextile, and so the Sun is opposition to Venus-Uranus midpoint with 52-minute orb. That adds even more to this configuration. The Sun is getting involved. So we have 5 planets in this interconnected pattern. So the Sun comes in, toning only 2 of it. The Sun is not involved with all 4 planets. It's connected primarily to the Venus and Uranus. Of course, it is also square Jupiter, but that's kind of a different thing. This part here is symmetrical and has a midpoint. And the Sun is connected to which 2 planets? Venus, Uranus. The 2 that are the most important. So the fact you have a kite with Venus and Uranus, also Neptune, and a 4th planet, Jupiter, thrown in, and you have Sun also feeding into this configuration, connecting to the 2 most important ones, Venus, Uranus, this is huge. So what it means is here's that connection to the strongest Venus vibe of one of the people. So what we are doing here with vibrational astrology is we realize we don't know all of how astrology works. We're in a process of discovering how astrology works, very different from what anybody thought. So we're discovering that there's something called Venus vibes. What vibe is Venus strong in? And then we're discovering that needs to be activated by the other person. And what we were missing before, let me repeat it again, is we were not looking at the composite chart. And if we don't look at the composite chart, we would have concluded that this strong Venus vibe is not activated. And if the relationship ends up being long-lasting and, wonderfully romantic, in love or whatever for decades or something, our analysis would be wrong. And we could just say, oh, well, the vibrational astrology technique didn't work. But the reason it didn't work is because it was on the right track but missing an additional factor. The additional factor is always look at the composite chart as well as the synastry for the Venus vibes. First find the Venus vibe, see if there's synastry through the biwheel, then create that vibe of the composite chart. That's simple. And if you don't see a strong connection in the synastry or the composite chart, then you have problems. You have problems in the sense that the Venus vibe is not getting activated. Now, there are going to be several Venus vibes, sometimes 3, 4, 5 of them, and not all of them will get activated. But you do want to activate the strongest ones. That's the priority. This Venus vibe is the strongest of any vibration among both of the people. This 35 vibe in what I'm going to call the first of the 2 people, or I can call it person A, is the strongest. It has the most planets with the smallest orbs. And is it getting activated? It's getting activated through the composite chart. Extremely strong. Many planets, small orbs. And based on what we saw from the research on the databases, also based on theory, which I talked about in other videos, the composite chart should be more important than the synastry. So this means that this kind of feeling is happening between the people, and it is happening. And so it's fitting the actual observation. Okay, so that's one of the Venus vibes, and we're seeing how the composite chart of that vibe is important. This is a new idea we're introducing, but it's a new idea built from the other ideas. It's like a natural conclusion. Like, duh, the composite chart was the strongest thing you saw in the research. Why not look at it, you know? If that's the strongest thing, what's your problem, man? You should be looking at it. So we're looking at it. Okay, now, excuse me. Let's look at the next strongest vibe. I don't have an absolute perfect way to say which Venus vibe is the strongest, but just overall, you just look at the chart wheel, and another strong one is 8 vibe. And compared to the 35 vibe, it's only mildly strong for the other person. So the other Venus vibes are not so strong. There was only one that really stood out, which is the one I just showed you, 35 vibe for person A, we'll call that person. Now, this one shows up for person B, and it's fairly strong. And here's what it is. Not super strong, because it's primarily in the inner ring is person B, and this is the 8 vibe. So the 8 vibe, person B has Venus, Pluto, trine, Saturn. All pretty tight. Saturn here at 24 Cancer is trine Pluto at 23 Pisces, and Venus at 26 Pisces. Venus, Pluto, Saturn. So it's only 3 planets. It's strong. Uranus, one thing that increases this a little bit is that Uranus at 13 Pisces is 10 degrees from Pluto, 13 degrees from Venus. That's pretty weak, but it's adding a little bit. Very little bit. But primarily it's the 3 planets, Venus, Pluto, trine, Saturn. Now, what does it mean? It shows a compulsive attraction, Venus, Pluto, for something sincere, honest, and free of glamour, Venus with Pluto and Saturn. Person A, that person with the strong 35 vibe, is in the outer ring. Now, does person A, the person in the outer ring, connect to this Venus, Pluto, Saturn? We want, in order to get a strong romantic connection that's likely to last, we want the other person to connect to the Venus vibe, either through synastry or composite. Is there a synastry connection? Oh my God, yes. Person A in the outer ring has a sun-moon sextile. Venus is not involved, so we didn't call it a Venus vibe. Actually, Venus might be weakly involved, or maybe not that weak, because it might be at the midpoint. We could double check and that Venus is opposition to the sun. But in any case, her sun sextile moon, very tight moon, 21 Cancer, 47, almost 22 Cancer. Sun, early 22 Virgo 05. Very strong sextile, connecting right in with the Venus, Pluto, trine, Saturn. 21 and 22 degrees, right in there aspecting all of this. So we have it in the synastry. The sun and moon connect to this configuration. So here's how we would interpret. Person B in the inner ring has a desire for something intensely real. Finding fulfillment through something intensely real. Any dishonesty. Now here's where you get to consult the clients, because these configurations make demands. They're asking the people to do something. Let's go back to the 35 vibe. What is this asking the people to do? It's asking them to get involved in activities that like games, like it can be dancing, yoga exercises. I mean, almost everything in life that we engage in requires some focus and some fun coming out of that. With Venus, Uranus, Neptune, that Venus, Uranus, Neptune can be tremendously, in love. Like and almost visionary and mystical. It's like transported just by sharing things, doing things that you give attention to, and they're curious and interesting. Just discussing interesting ideas, anything. What is this configuration asking? It's saying that person B in the inner ring, that any dishonesty or superficiality causes problems. Venus, Pluto, Saturn. When you have Saturn, Pluto, it strips things bare. So from the point of view of person B, if there's some dishonesty, some holding back, some just glamour, some exaggeration, it's a big turnoff. It's the intensity of being honest and direct and straightforward is very, very important. Because person A in the outer ring has Sun and Moon connected to it, the flow of energy between them naturally develops this way. Both lights coming into the Venus, Pluto, Saturn, saying, here's what you're looking for. Here it is. However, people are not perfect. We don't always live up to the basic theme. Any inability to do this, any glamour, exaggeration, superficiality, will become a problem. There's a low tolerance for it. For person B, Venus, Pluto, Saturn, Sun, Moon, means the energy is there, it's going to happen, and it's up to the people to channel it well, to do what's being asked for. Sincerity and honesty are key issues. Here's the conclusion, the more these two people trust each other, the stronger the relationship. Of course, trust is important in any relationship, but here you see it extremely emphasized. And the less they trust each other, the weaker the relationship is. So trust becomes an important issue, because Venus, Saturn, Pluto means, are we getting down to the core? Are we telling the truth? Are we being sincere? Now, so the synastry of the 8 vibe, it's very, very good. I mean, having the Sun and Moon connect to that, wonderful. But let's also remember to always look at the composite chart. So we're going to look at the 8 vibe of the composite chart. We select the composite chart, we select the 8 vibration of it. We want to look at this because the research of the databases shows that the composite chart is very important, even more important than the synastry. Now, if nothing shows up, it's not awful, because there is the synastry, so that's good. But let's see if there's also anything happening in the 8 vibe of the composite. Here it is. In the upper left corner, it tells us this is the 8th harmonic of the composite chart. Is anything happening in this chart? Well, we see a big grand trine with Venus. Venus is what we're looking at to see if there's going to be this attraction. There is a Venus, Mars, Uranus, Neptune grand trine, and the Sun is involved in a kite. In fact, this is 2 kites. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points of a 6-pointed star. In the 8 vibration chart of the composite, we have 5 points of a 6-point of a Star of David, 6-pointed star. Saturn's a little weaker. Notice the lines are thin to Saturn. The one to the Sun is extremely strong. Look at the 2 thick lines of Venus and Neptune to Uranus. 2 thick lines of Venus and Neptune to Mars. This trine, fairly thick between Uranus and Mars. The sextiles to the Sun, thick. The whole kite pattern, extremely strong. And not only is it a kite, but there's a conjunction. So there are 2, 3, 4, 5 planets. And what are the planets? Venus, Mars, Uranus, and Neptune, and the Sun. We said Venus-Uranus is the strongest for romantic compatibility. Then Venus-Mars. And then Venus-Neptune is also very important. Wow, it doesn't get much stronger than this. This means that the intensity of the excitement, Venus-Mars-Uranus, is the most powerful electrifying combination for romantic excitability and dreaminess and falling in love, all that kind of stuff. And that's what you have. With Neptune thrown in, it just doesn't get much more extreme than this. And the Sun and Saturn involved as well, a little more weakly. And not only that, even Jupiter gets involved with 2 of the planets, Sun and Uranus, with this Yod pattern. Crazy, incredibly strong. What does it mean? Again, the Venus-Mars-Uranus, the most intensely romantic and sexual energy, and it's an 8 vibration. 8 vibration is the most fundamental, powerful, important vibration overall. It's even more powerful than the natal chart because it's what we call an octave of the natal chart. It's your inner driving force. So, the Venus-Uranus-Neptune part of it, which is very strong, is dreamy, mystical, visionary. The Venus-Mars-Neptune can lead to love sickness if there's a lack of real communication. Venus-Mars-Neptune can become just lost in like a reverie. And with Venus-Mars-Neptune, it's important that the people communicate clearly, connect, do practical things. If they're not communicating clearly, if they're just projecting things on each other, very easy for Venus, Mars, Neptune to do. You can be in love with love and not with the other person. So we have Venus, Uranus, Neptune, Venus, Mars, Neptune. Saturn comes in less exact. Jupiter's opposite the Sun, Uranus. As I said, the 8 vibe is fundamental. There are 7 of the 10 planets are involved in this configuration in some way. Let's see, the only ones not involved are Mercury, Moon, and when I'm saying Pluto's not involved, the only way Pluto's involved is weakly conjunct Uranus. In my consultations back in the 1970s, I would see synastry things. Venus, Mars, Uranus. And what I found very often is they were too hot to handle. By that I mean the passion is so strong. I consulted several couples with configurations like this. And what I found within 1 year, I think there were about 3 couples, and then a few years later had connections like this. You know, I was consulting pretty much nonstop. I think it was 10,000 interviews and consultations. And I found that it was often too hard to handle. The people would break up. And the reason they would break up is from misunderstandings, little jealousies, little feelings that they're being ignored. You know, why weren't you paying attention to me? The passion can become so strong that it actually doesn't always work. It's like what people might dream they would love to experience, but there's a kind of intensity that leads to wanting like a total immersion, a total, you're just so detached from, you're so inspired, so dreamy, so driven, that it becomes hard to function in a practical way. And then things like jealousy, possessiveness can get involved. Any slight thing the other person does can be difficult. So my advice to these people would be, that's what can happen, and so it's up to you to find some way to make sure it doesn't happen. So there it is. This is the experience that people are having. It makes sense, and we're seeing that the composite chart is so important. We need to look at it. Follow the rule. See what the Venus vibes are. Look at the synastry and look at the composite. It's that simple. We haven't always been looking at the composite of the Venus vibrations. That's the missing key. And we see that in the top two vibrations, the very powerful 35 vibe, the very strong 8 vibe, the composite chart's there. And it fits the situation of these particular people. Now, where am I here? I'm at 26 minutes. In the third video in the series, we're going to look at another strong vibration. You've got the idea. If all you wanted to do is get the idea of what this new insight into compatibility is, you have it. If you want more practice and more examples of seeing how this works, watch the additional videos. I'm going to show you more examples so that you get this idea of what is a Venus vibe, what are we going to see in the bi-wheel for synastry, and what will we see in the composite, and how do we evaluate that? So if you want to get really good at this and be able to consult people, then watch these next videos as well. It will really help you develop a depth of understanding. I'm so excited about this because every step that we take to improve our techniques is a giant step to make sure we're not missing important information. That's one reason why I'm excited about it. A second reason why I'm excited about it is that it simplified our understanding. It simplified it because the database research was telling us that the composite chart is what we need to do. We need to be looking at that composite chart, prioritizing it, and we weren't doing that. So it's all fitting together. The results from the database, the examples with people and seeing if it makes sense. Does it connect? Is this what's happening? It's beautiful. It's all fitting together. There's so much more to learn about how astrology works. And this is another step forward. Okay, part 3, we're going to look at another strong vibe, another Venus vibe, which is 9 vibe for these particular people. Okay, my friends, thank you very much for being a member. Thank you very much for watching. God bless. Namaste.